Welcome back to our YouTube channel. I'm Spring, and today we're back with a little bit of a different style of video. I've been trying to film this video for a while, or kind of thinking about the points that I want to say. But I'm not that comfortable talking to the camera just yet, so I'm just going to try and keep this as raw and natural, like I'm talking to a friend kind of video. Today's video we're going to talk about 5 things that I wish I knew when I started martial arts. So a little bit about me. I've done martial arts for quite a while now. Started when I was 9. I did Aikido for the most part of my martial arts journey, and then I transitioned into doing multiple kind of martial arts. So I did Aikido, Muay Thai, boxing, judo, BJJ, and started really focusing on my Muay Thai when I started competing. So that just became more of my focus because I started competing professionally, and obviously that takes a lot more time. So we've had a lot of time this year to kind of sit down and reflect, and just, you know, life happens, and ISO. We've been in isolation or like in quarantine here in Melbourne for close to probably 8 months now. So it's a lot of me time, a lot of time reflecting, and I thought it'd be kind of like a fun video series to do with me and the team, just kind of reflecting, or, you know, giving some tips or just some advice to our younger selves when we started martial arts. So I've kind of written down 5 points, but it may just kind of all jumble into one, but I'll try and keep it on track, because there's obviously more than 5 things that you've learned in your martial arts journey. And yeah, like just trying to like narrow it down to 5, it's pretty hard. But let's just start with number 1. And number 1 is consistency. Consistency is key to having any kind of success or progress in your martial arts journey. When I started doing martial arts, I was not a very good student. I only trained once a week. And even the once a week, I was kind of like half-heartedly doing it because my parents said that I should do it, you know. Anyway, if I was to kind of go back and tell myself what I should be doing, or like a bit of advice for myself, would be consistent with your training. Even if you're starting out twice a week, try and be consistent with it. Don't give yourself excuses. Rock up to class, do the work, and not just rock up kind of half-heartedly as well. So when you kind of go into training, a lot of people carry a lot of their baggage from the day into the training session. So they're coming in, they're feeling really down in life already, a bit low, a little bit stressed, and they're carrying all that baggage with them into class. And you can't really expect a very good outcome in your training, or like the most productive session, when you're bringing yourself in with that kind of like down attitude already. So when you come into your class, just forget about whatever's going on in your life or whatever's happening. If it's a good day, it's a bad day, it's like, that's kind of remove that from training and just show up. Like, show up for yourself, not just for yourself, but for your team as well. Because if I come with a really bad attitude to class, and I'm like, oh my God, I had such a crap day today. I'm so tired, I'm so stressed out. Like, that kind of attitude doesn't help yourself, and it doesn't help the people around you. So if you're trying to lift yourself up, have the best session ever, and lift your training partners up as well, rock up with a good attitude, and I promise you the class will be so much better. Where was I going with this? Oh, consistency. Yes, okay. And being consistent not just entails kind of rocking up to the classes, it also means being consistent with your other work. So you got to do your conditioning, your rehab, your prehab, your mental work, you know, working in yourself. That's all consistency as well, because that will eventually build up into something. It'll be really hard for you to kind of fix it once it's kind of broken. So you don't want to wait until you get, I don't know, like hip pain, or, you know, like an injured shoulder. You want to be really self-aware with these things and be consistent with taking the time to do the more boring stuff, you know, the glute activation, your core work, whether it's like resistance band work, whatever it is. Try and be consistent with all that stuff as well, not just rocking up to class and smashing pads, or like, you know, doing your judo boxing session. There's a lot of other things that kind of assist you in having a successful martial arts journey. Okay, so let's move on to number 2, which I think is super important, is to surround yourself with kind of like-minded people and a good team. Martial arts journey is kind of like up, down, you know, you've got wins, you've got successes, and then you have all the low points as well. And even though it is a very kind of solo journey, like you do feel a little bit lonely sometimes, but it's helpful to have people around you that share the same fire and share the same passion and share the same vision, and they kind of like, you fuel each other to be better. For me personally, I feel that it's important to surround yourself with people that don't let you slack off. Like, they want you to be the best and you want the best of them as well. So they're not there to kind of baby you. They're not there to kind of like just say, oh, you know, you're doing really well, or like, oh, you're tired, just rest. Like, that's not, that can be helpful, but that's not necessarily the type of support that you need in your martial arts journey, because it's quite a tough journey, and it's, you know, sometimes you need to be honest with people, not so much soothe them, if that makes sense. So I found that kind of being around like-minded people, or having your training buddy or your accountability buddy, having just someone to make the whole thing more fun and a little bit less lonely, I find that really helpful in pushing myself forward. And yeah, it's nice to kind of chat to people with a similar kind of mindset or similar kind of goals, or, you know, issues that you have. Or for example, like, I've got a bruised shin, you know, like, how do you deal with it? Or like, I've got a bad loss, like, how do you deal with it? And just kind of sharing ideas and bouncing ideas as well. Like, I think that's really helpful. Let's move on. I hope this is making sense so far. Point number 3 that I kind of wish that I told myself this earlier, or like had more awareness about this earlier, was to be more respectful to myself and to love myself more. Because I think we take a lot of ourselves for granted. Like, we kind of just think that there's tomorrow, you know, we're not really taking care of our bodies, we're not being really self-aware about how we're fueling our bodies. And I think, just in summary, I just wasn't very respectful or loving towards myself. You know, in time, like, you're not gonna be like 17 forever. You're gonna grow older and, you know, hopefully have a really long, fulfilling life. But as you go through the stages of your life, your body changes, you know, your goals change, but it doesn't mean that you can't train martial arts anymore. You know, if you stop competitive fighting, it doesn't mean that you just start binging and like not taking care of yourself. Or, you know, you're going through a rough patch in your martial arts journey, you had a couple of losses, you know, it doesn't mean you go out drinking and just like trashing your body up. I've kind of done all the above, besides the not competitive fighting part. But I've gone through stages where I've had like injuries, or, you know, like a bad string of losses, and I just wasn't taking care of myself. I was kind of just amplifying the problem by being mean to myself and being disrespectful to my body. And obviously that kind of creates the, you know, like a kind of like, it's just like rolling effect where I feel even worse because my body doesn't feel great. I'm not feeling healthy, I'm not feeling fit, I'm not feeling sharp in the mind, and I'm just making it worse for myself. I think, you know, it's totally normal, and it's fine to kind of treat yourself and to love yourself and not push yourself to the point of like breaking in terms of training or overtraining. But it's also the other aspect of it where you're kind of you're not taking care of yourself by giving yourself too much of, let's say, food, or too much of sleep, or like not enough running. And yeah, so I think we all go through periods where we forget to respect ourselves and we forget to love ourselves, and, you know, maybe we feel like we don't deserve it, or we don't feel like, you know, we have to, or like it's just gonna be there tomorrow, I'm gonna be like 17 forever. But that's just not the case. And I think kind of catching yourself before you roll into that, or dig yourself deeper into that hole, I think it's important. Point number 4. All right, so this one is kind of an interesting one, because I always felt like I would reach this point one day where I feel like, okay, I'm finally satisfied with myself. I'm finally feeling like I've reached this point of like, feeling like comfortable, or like feeling like I'm good enough. And till now, I don't think I've reached there. Maybe further down the line I will, but I think I was striving so much for that at the start, where I was thinking like, if I just get this, I'm gonna be happy, or if I just like, you know, achieve this amount of X and I'll be happy. But it never really was the case. And if anything, it kind of like dampened my whole training experience, because I had all this pressure on myself and all this like tension that I brought into training or into my fights. And it just, like, I just kind of like stopped having fun as well somewhere along the way. And then I realized that, you know, it's this point in time and I'm never gonna have it back. So I just want to enjoy it while I'm there. And yes, you're doing the best you can, but it doesn't mean that you're gonna beat yourself up every time you're not perfect. It doesn't matter that you're not perfect in your head, but you're doing the best you can for each training session. So for example, you go in and you're smashing pads really well today, and you're like, this is the best session ever, I'm so fit, I'm feeling good, and tomorrow you go in and it's not as good as today, and you start beating yourself up. It's like, why am I not as good? You know, this is not acceptable level of blah, 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 blah. And I have a lot of that self-talk, you know, during sparring or during fights, and I just kind of like used to beat myself up so much to the point that I'm kind of forgetting to enjoy myself along the way and to be grateful that I had this opportunity to do what I want to do today, be in training, my body's fit, my mind's healthy, I'm still able to do this, you know, not to take that for granted, and to realize that maybe you're never going to reach that point where you feel like, yeah, I'm, you know, I've achieve what I want to achieve, or like I feel successful enough, or you know, I'm kind of done with this like level of, not done with this, it's kind of more like they're feeling comfortable, or like, you know, feeling like, I've reached the point. I don't think that will ever, maybe never happen. I'm not too sure, but for me anyway, like I feel like after I shifted my mindset to kind of just doing the best I could in every situation or for that day, it made the whole journey much more enjoyable, and it made me more productive as well, because I wasn't constantly like trying to, you know, kind of living in the past about thinking, oh, you know, that day was better, or my run was better the other day, or like my pads were better that day, or like, oh, sparring was so much better last week. You know, I've kind of stopped thinking so much about those moments and kind of focusing on now, because I mean, those moments don't really promise anything's good's gonna happen in the future anyway. It's kind of like, it goes moment to moment, like in fights. You can be as prepared as you can, and then it just doesn't go your way, or it goes your way, you know. It's just, that's kind of like the beauty of martial arts as well. I think it kind of really brings you to this moment in time where you feel alive, and you feel like the whole thing just kind of zones in into this moment in time. And I think that's really special. Like, that's a really good lesson that I'm trying to kind of spread into the rest of my life, because yeah, I don't know, maybe something happens tomorrow, I can't train, I can't do this, you know, and it's like, I don't want my last training session to constantly be, you know, you're not good enough, or like, you know, you're never gonna get there, that kind of like bad talk in my head. All right, let's move on to the last one, which is keep going. I think as a beginner, or like when I still feel like a beginner anyway, in a lot of the stuff that I do, it's easy to kind of like ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? You know, you should just quit. Or people kind of try and get that thought into your head as well. Like, I honestly think that martial arts is for life. And when I started getting very passionate about training and started getting very focused in my training, I always had to remind myself that I want to do this for a very long time. And sometimes you have to remind yourself that, you know, like, it's easy to kind of say, I'm gonna do this forever when you're having a really good day, or like, you know, things are going well. And then sometimes things just don't go as planned, or you're just having a hard time and you feel like quitting. And I feel like at those points in time, it's good to just kind of take a break from yourself in your head. Like, you know, go read a book, go for a walk, you know, play with dogs, get creative and do something else for like half a day, but never stop your training, in a sense. Like, you can do training in many other ways. You can train your mental game, you can train, you know, your emotional game, whatever it is that needs work, but just keep going is something that I wish I knew when I was younger, because I did take a couple of breaks during my martial arts journey. I think I took like a year or two off, like when I was a teenager, just making up all these excuses about why I couldn't do it, like exams, like, you know, now I look back at it now and I'm like, why? Why did you do that? And yeah, like, you know, like I said, sometimes there'll be people there that kind of make you do it, like my parents, they pushed me for the first couple of years of my martial arts journey, and then they kind of did just give up and they're like, you want to quit, just quit. And it's a shame, really, you know, if you start something and you're not really seeing yourself through the whole journey. Like, it's gonna be hard, it's gonna be not so fun at times, but on the flip side of that, there's so much that comes out from dedicating yourself to this journey. And whatever martial arts that you're doing, you know, it could be Aikido, it could be judo, it could be boxing, Krav Maga, Silat, anything really. Like I know you guys know for yourself that the further you journey down this, you know, I guess the more interesting it becomes, and the deeper you go into it, like it just unravels different layers that you never imagined were there. And I guess also one thing that I find really interesting with martial arts is that it's so honest, and you have to be honest with yourself, and it really makes you look at yourself and yeah, like different patterns in yourself, or you know, like it's just really interesting. Like it's hard for me to explain it into words, but it's kind of like a mirror to your own self. Or similarly, like when you're training with someone, you can tell from how they're moving that, you know, what's going on internally with them as well. I think martial arts is a very honest kind of practice, and it's yeah, it's something very special, and it teaches you a whole lot of things that, you know, I've not done learning yet, and I don't feel like I can tell you what you're learning from it, because everyone has a different experience. But yeah, you know, sometimes we just need a reminder to keep going and do the best you can, and every day is a new day, and it'll get better if it's, you know, if it's a rough time, and if you're having a great time, just ride that energy and do the best you can. And yeah, I hope that made sense, guys. Kind of like rambled into a little bit of all the points, but I hope that gives you a little bit of like a perspective or overview of what I was trying to get out today, which was just, you know, like 5 simple things that I wish that I knew when starting my martial arts journey. And I'm sure that I'm gonna have like 20 more things like a year from now. But yeah, it was nice chatting to you guys, and I hope that you guys are staying well, staying sane if you're still in quarantine, and I'll see you guys next time. Happy training!